The Walking Dead is arguably the most iconic TV show of all time. It forever changed the way people view and create post-apocalyptic/zombie stories. The Walking Dead started off as a series of comic books written by Robert Kirkman. Interestingly enough, neither the comics or the show ever used the word zombie, even though it is a zombie story. Today, though, we will be discussing not the comics, but the TV show. I will be ranking the top 10 most iconic moments from the television series. Now, this is not the best moments, but the most iconic moments. The moments that we think of whenever we think about The Walking Dead. Number 10. Alpha and the Pikes. Now we all remember the shock value when we saw the first head on the pike, and then the camera slowly begins panning down the row of pikes, revealing more and more beloved characters' heads on the pikes. After Alpha had told our heroes that she had made a boundary between the land that they were allowed in and the land that the Whisperers were allowed in, we had no idea what to expect. We soon realized, though, what the boundary was. The fear of who is going to be next was a feeling none of us will ever forget.
No!
Number 9. Eugene had no cure. Eugene, the scientist who knew how to save the world, or so we thought. Whenever Eugene was first introduced, we thought that something seemed too good to be true, but still wanted to believe it.
I have a very important mission.
But soon found out that it was too good to be true. Eugene never had the cure. He just needed protection and lied to Abraham so he would protect him. But it wasn't long until it came to a dramatic conclusion.
I lied. I'm not a scientist.
And then with a good punch in the face.
You may want to leave me here, but...
Hey! Come on! Get off of him! Oh my God.
Number 8. Rick's sharp teeth. The Claimers, they were an intimidating group, but they didn't last very long after coming into contact with our survivors. We knew Rick could do some pretty terrifying things to survive and to protect the ones that he loved. But this took things to a whole new level. Rick was restrained and saw that his friends and son were in trouble. But it wasn't until he saw his son getting ready to be harmed that Rick snapped and ripped the lead Claimer's throat right out with his teeth.
Right over here! What the hell are you gonna do now, sport?
Number 7. Rick's final stand. Another Rick entry. We knew Rick's time on this show was nearing an end, but never wanted to accept it, until it came time that we had to. Rick had been the main character on the show for 8 whole years. That is 9 seasons that he was on this show. We never wanted to see the end of his character, but the time finally came. As Rick was leading a massive walker horde on horseback, his horse bucked him off onto a piece of rebar. But Rick, being the survivor he is, pulled himself off of the rebar and led the horde to a newly constructed unstable bridge. Knowing the horde would completely destroy his home and all of his fellow survivors, he knew he had to stop it one way or another. He raised his iconic gun one last time and blew the bridge up, causing all the walkers to go with it.
I found him.
We thought Rick was dead until we saw him get picked up into a mysterious helicopter and then flew off. Number 6. The Governor's Secret. When the governor first came on the scene, we thought all was good. He had a good, safe community going on with no troubles, except for the fact the governor himself was a psychotic killer. We knew things were too good to be true, but didn't know for sure until the governor led a group to kill a harmless military convoy for supplies.
Found you too!
And really figured it out later that episode whenever he walked into his private quarters by himself and had walker heads floating in fish tanks as he sat and watched them. Definitely a psycho. Number 5. Everybody's infected. Early on in the series, we didn't know anything about the walkers except they liked to bite, and if you got bit, you would become one. The group was close to Atlanta, which is conveniently where the CDC is located, so they decided to head there to see if there's a cure. Both the survivors and the audience are disappointed to hear there is none. We later learned something even more devastating. Everybody is already infected.
We're all infected.
The shock from this news completely changed the show forever and set it apart from other zombie TV shows. Number 4. SOPHIA'S in the barn. The first biggest shocker in The Walking Dead. The moment in the show whenever we knew we weren't dealing with just some ordinary show. The group had been looking for Sophia, a daughter, one of the survivors, for days, if not weeks by this point. Then, as the group began eliminating walkers that had been stored in a barn, the final walker that walked out was Sophia. Number 3. Shane's death. Shane, one of my favorite characters in the show and one of the most important in the whole entire series. He was best friends with Rick, and tension began to build between the two for the whole entire season. Shane slowly began losing it, and by the end of the series, he had finally broken. He led Rick out into an open, isolated field, plotting to finish Rick off once and for all. But Rick was smarter than that. He had an idea the whole time that that was what Shane was planning. But it wasn't until they got to the field that Rick knew for sure what was about to happen.
So this is where you plan to do it?
The tension didn't stop there. They began talking to each other, and just when it seemed like Shane was going to put the gun down and everything was going to be okay, Rick stabbed him, putting Shane down once and for all.
Damn you for making me do this shit! This is you!
Number 2. The Don't Open Dead Inside doors. The most iconic set of doors in film history, the Don't Open Dead Inside doors were hospital doors in the very first episode of the show. After Rick had just woken up from his coma in a post-apocalyptic world scattered with the dead, this was the first sign that he was not in a normal world anymore. Walker's hands began to creep and slide their way through the door, creating a truly eerie sight, and one the world will not forget. While it may not be an iconic moment necessarily, it is a very iconic piece from the show. People who don't even watch The Walking Dead recognize those doors. Before we get to our number 1 spot, I have a few honorable mentions that I would like to share. The first honorable mention on this list is one I just had to include. Carl getting his eye shot out. The audience couldn't believe it and thought Carl had died. The shockwaves that this scene sent through the audience could not be forgotten. Second and final honorable mention is whenever Eugene saved the group's day. After we had made up our minds that we couldn't stand Eugene, he made up for it by putting faulty bullets in the Savior's guns, which then led to the survivors winning and Rick slitting Negan's throat. Now, for our final spot, the number one spot. You may be thinking that this scene hasn't showed up yet. Well, this is that scene. This is the number one spot for The Walking Dead's most iconic scenes. The introduction to Negan. This whole entire scene sent shockwaves through the audience and even the world. As the survivors are surrounded by the Saviors, Negan steps out of the iconic RV.
Pissing our pants yet?
He then tells the group he is going to kill one of them to send a message. He then plays Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo with all of the members.
I got an idea. Eeny.
And right when he chooses, the season goes off. We didn't know who it was, and we wouldn't find out till next season. But then we found out finally. Abraham was chosen. In possibly the most gruesome scene in the show, Negan kills Abraham.
Oh, look at that! Taking it like a champ!
Just when we think things can't get any worse, Daryl jumps up and punches Negan right in the face, resulting in Negan having to send another message by killing Glenn, who had been on the show since the very beginning.
So, back to it.
It was truly a tear-jerking scene and possibly a scarring scene for some, but most definitely The Walking Dead's most iconic moment. Thanks for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. Hope y'all have an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one.